So I've been talking with the KhAnubis marketing team as of late, and they've been thinking we should probably be reaching out to newer demographics. You know, like the hip young demographics of our day. We should be reaching out to them. Anyway, let's talk about the multinational political and economic unions of Asia. A couple months ago, I set out to explore the multinational unions of the world. It was a popular video that's mandated a follow-up because of the sheer number of multinational unions I could have talked about. But it was also a bit hard to choose which unions to talk about. So I thought I'd put a little spin on the idea and instead start by going region by region. Starting off in Asia. So you've heard of the European Union, you've learned of the African Union, you've assumed a North American Union would basically be a future union between the US and Canada, you've heard of Mercosur and the Indian community in South America, sure, and you've probably completely forgot about Oceania. But what about an Asian Union? Well, Asia's too big and diverse for that, right? I mean, not only does it contain more than half the human population, stretching from Syria to Siberia to Singapore to Sri Lanka to Saudi Arabia, but it's also politically varied. Some countries are liberal democracies, some are a bit more authoritarian than that, some are somewhere in between, one is actually in the European Union, and some I literally don't even know anymore. Asia does, however, have a bunch of smaller regional unions, neatly listed here on this flowchart from Wikipedia, which I will be using for this video. So I guess this is kind of a preview of how the rest of this video will look. So just take a good look here real quick and alright, that's enough. Let's begin with ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. ASEAN was founded with the Bangkok Declaration in 1967 as the Association of Southeast Asia, or ASA, later expanding to its current list of 10 full members and 2 observers, now covering the whole of Southeast Asia. Now, I could talk about them in this video, or I could focus our time on other unions and instead redirect those of you still curious about ASEAN to the other videos I made talking about ASEAN, including a whole video I made just about ASEAN, which I would much more recommend if you want to learn specifically about ASEAN. Moving west to South Asia, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, or SAARC, consists of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, the Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and, get this, India and Pakistan. The idea for something like this was conceived as far back as the late 1940s, but was finally put into action in 1985 in Dhaka, having been largely pushed for by Bangladesh, and the demand for such an organization emphasized in some ways by the Soviet-Afghan War. From its headquarters in Kathmandu, Nepal, the SAARC aims to develop economic and regional integration, having launched the South Asian Free Trade Area, or SAFTA, in 2006, and also having established relations with other nations, including the European Union as a whole. Within the same neighborhood as the previous two, the MGC, or Mekong-Ganga Cooperation, comprises of India, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Founded in 2000 in Vientiane, Laos, the MGC emphasizes cooperation regarding tourism, culture, education, and transportation, with different member nations leading different initiatives, aiming to better interconnect the regions surrounding the Mekong and Ganges rivers. Still staying within South Asia, we also see the Bay of Bengal, whose bordering countries, aside from Malaysia and Indonesia, are all part of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multisectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, or BIMSTEC. Seeing as these countries are all dependent on the Bay of Bengal for basically all their little country things, like trade, these 7 nations have agreed to cooperate in regard to 14 different economic sectors: trade and investment, transport and communication, energy, tourism, technology, fisheries, agriculture, public health, poverty alleviation, counterterrorism, environment and disaster management, people-to-people contact, cultural cooperation, and climate change. And initially formed in 1997 in Bangkok under the name BIMSTEC, the name gradually being tweaked over the years. Next up is an alliance called the Shanghai Organisation für Zusammenarbeit. Wait, who put this part of the script in German? The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, between 8 full member states, 4 observer states, 6 dialogue partners, and 4 guest attendances. The SCO was founded in 2001 between the 5 nations previously part of the Shanghai Five, and Uzbekistan. No prizes on guessing where the treaty was signed, with India and Pakistan joining in 2017. The SCO is more based on military cooperation than the other more economically focused organizations within the chart, conducting regular military exercises for the security of member states. Over in the Middle East, we have the GCC, or Gulf Cooperation Council, which I also already talked about in a previous video, but basically comprises all of the Persian Gulf nations whose names aren't IRA something. namely Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the Emirates, and Oman. The GCC is much more interconnected than the other organizations on our list thus far, at least in terms of freedom of movement, as GCC citizens, aside from Qataris in recent years, are free to live and work in other member nations. The GCC was founded in 1981 as a political and economic union, with more recent suggestions from Saudi Arabia to form it into a kind of Gulf Union, largely as a kind of counterbalance to Iranian influence in the region. You can learn more about them in the first part of the series though, so I won't waste your time here. Now for a union that got actually a fairly surprising amount of mentions in the comments of the first video, the Turkic Council, made up of Turkey, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan, and with Hungary as an observer state, with headquarters in Istanbul, Baku, Nur-Sultan, formerly Astana, and interestingly enough for reasons I just mentioned, Budapest. The Turkic Council was established in 2009 as a method of common dialogue among the Turkic states of the world, emphasizing mutual friendship, favorable conditions for trade, and promoting regional cooperation, among other goals. Comprising of the full members of the Turkic Council, plus 5 of their neighbors, is the somewhat generically named Economic Cooperation Organization, essentially a trade bloc between these nations to promote trade and investment opportunities between these 10 nations, as well as somewhat easier sea access for all the landlocked nations. Lastly, we have the Asia Cooperation Dialogue, or ACD. An intergovernmental organization comprising all but 12 to 15 of the countries of Asia. It's not exactly like the European or African unions, but it is kind of sort of the closest thing we currently have to an Asian union, described as a kind of missing link in intercontinental diplomacy, and aiming to stand for cooperation among Asian countries, maintaining independence of said countries, and integrating some of the previous organizations we've covered here. It was founded in 2002 by 18 founding members, having since grown to its current member count of 34. So that was at least a basic summary of Asia's international unions, or at least those from this chart on Wikipedia. Now, my summaries might have been brief, but most of these unions are really just economic or governmental unions aimed at increasing trade or cooperation or dialogue between a group of countries. Maybe a couple could have been video worthy, but maybe not all of them, hence me cramming them all into this video. Also, perhaps I should be glad I chose to talk about Asia in this video, seeing as earlier this week, the channel TLDR News EU literally made this exact video, but for Europe. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check out their video, I guess. If you like this video and want to see more of this in the future from me, however, do be sure to let me know in the comments, and be sure to leave a like and share it with your friends, family, FBI agent, pets, or whoever. And subscribe so you can learn something new every Sunday. And maybe also get me a little bit closer to that silver play button.